Although they might not be known by everyone, the Modern Lovers sound helped to surge proto-punk into the ears of the people who needed to hear it the most. And this week on Forever Spinning, we look at the Modern Lovers' self-titled 1976 release. In early 1970, the Modern Lovers were united in Boston, Massachusetts by their fearless leader, Jonathan Richman. Richman would be joined by Ernie Brooks on bass, David Robinson on the drums, later with the Cars, and Jerry Harrison on keyboards, later with the Talking Heads. The Modern Lovers played a ton of live shows together before they ever recorded any actual music. They would grow quite the fan base between Boston to New York, and it garnered enough record executive attention for them to eventually be given the opportunity to fly to Los Angeles in 1972 to record. John Cale of the Velvet Underground actually ended up producing many of the demos that they recorded in Los Angeles for Warner Brothers. They also recorded with A&M producers Alan Mason and Robert Appere for a couple more of their tracks. After everything was said and done, the band had enough music to finally release a full LP, but they never did. Well, at least not with that current setup of the band. They couldn't decide which label to sign with, and after a residency in Bermuda, the band finally decided to sign with Warner Brothers and to allow John Cale to produce the remainder of the songs. This was short-lived, however, due to the frequent clashes between Richman and Cale, and the band broke up a few months later without ever really leaving their fans with a true representation of audio recording of what the band was. In 1974, Richman signed with a new record label as a solo artist owned by Matthew Kaufman. Kaufman then decided to dig up the old Modern Lovers recordings, remix them, and eventually release them under the band's name. And, well, the rest is history. The Modern Lovers' self-titled LP was released in August of 1976 on Berserkly Records to immediate critical acclaim. The only single to be released alongside of this revolutionary art rock record is Roadrunner. Roadrunner takes the listener on a ride through a stream-of-conscious journey through the streets of Boston and the adjacent suburbs. Richman's infamous count-off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, catapults the listener into a car that whizzes up the highway, up 128, and along the Old State Highway. With only 2 chords, Richman is able to pull us in for a ride that almost sounds nonsensical. He screams "radio on" while he points out landmarks whizzing by him as he cruises along. And there is no more substance to this song besides that, but that's the most freeing part. This is art rock and proto-punk at its most nonsensical, but it also becomes the most intriguing part of it all. The second track I'm going to discuss is Astral Plane. The instrumentals in this track feel weary and ethereal, giving off this otherworldly feeling of dissonance. As much as Richman focuses on the real for the most of this album, such as shouting out landmarks as he drives along in Roadrunner, this track tears down the fabric of reality. Richman searches for his love outside of the physical realm, as he searches to attain the love that he truly yearns for. Astral Plane brings a whole new dimension into the pop stratosphere as Richman focuses inward as opposed to focusing outward towards the material. The final track I would like to talk about is the groovy and unlikely Pablo Picasso. So often in music is the listener of the track the protagonist, being told that they're good enough, yada yada yada. But with Pablo Picasso, Richman completely flips this on its head, turning the listener into the antagonist. Quote, "Some people try to pick up girls and they get called an asshole, but that never happened to Pablo Picasso." It's the furthest thing from the truth that Pablo Picasso, an infamous womanizer, was never called an asshole for the various things that he did to women. It's the type of idea that only a proto-punk band like the Modern Lovers could pull off, turning the listener into the antagonist and forcing them to feel like the bad guy, where Pablo Picasso obviously is the asshole in this situation. The instrumentals continue on this unwavering riff that feels like the various instruments are almost arguing with each other. It is a strange track for sure, but it has also influenced how much of the fold pop music is able to push. In the early 70s in Boston, Massachusetts, the biggest band at the time was Aerosmith. Pretty remarkable to see that Jonathan Richman could write music that turned into the Modern Lovers at the current time. The Modern Lovers take much influence from East Coast proto-punk legends such as the Velvet Underground or Patti Smith, but they put their own twist on things, giving it a danceability, almost becoming post-punk in a time where post-punk was an idea because punk wasn't even an idea. It's impressive how forward-thinking this band was, and especially at the helm of Jonathan Richman, who is almost a bona fide genius just for this album alone. It's groovy, witty, smart, funny, thought-provoking, danceable. It's a fantastic record. This would go on to influence so many other groups, and as I mentioned earlier, Jerry Harrison, the keyboardist for the Modern Lovers, would go on to play with the Talking Heads. And you can totally hear the influence of the Modern Lovers in the Talking Heads music. And for that matter, you can hear the influence of the Modern Lovers on so many other records that came after it. It's a shame that not many people know that this album exists, but the people who do know it exists understand the importance and how great this record is. So, whether you've never heard this album before, or if it's a personal favorite of yours, the Modern Lovers self-titled LP will always be forever spinning. Thanks for watching.